right, sorry about that.
I can hear you. No, it's all right. I can hear.
Okay, Mayor, I'm sorry, did you call the meeting to order?
Not yet. I'm trying to get that grid thing up so I can see everybody.
Right,
I don't see it now.
upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I know, but it's not there. Well, I can see. You guys are gonna have to hold your hands up high. This is strange.
Okay,
Oh, wait a minute. I think, well, let's see. Okay, anyway. This meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council special meeting is called to order. Would you call the roll, please?
yes, Mayor Studebaker.
Here.
Councilor Mans.
Here.
Holhoff.
Here.
O'Neill.
Here.
Thank you. Wynn.
Here.
Lamont.
Here.
Wendland.
Here.
And also joining us at the meeting today is Martha Bennett, City Manager, David Powell, City Attorney, Anne Marie Simpson, City Recorder, Megan Phelan, Assistant City Manager, Scott Siegel, Planning and Building Services Director, Julia Warren, Human Resources Analyst, Jessica Numanalu, Planning Manager, and Katie Kirkland, Citizen Information Specialist.
Okay. I got it. There we go. Okay, I don't have the agenda. I haven't got it. I wasn't able to print it out.
Okay. Our first item of business is council business, and item 3.1 is resolution 2010.
I will be presenting that one, I assume. As you'll recall, the city code, under the city code, the city manager entered the declaration of a state of emergency back on March 22nd. Per code, the city council ratified that on the 23rd. And also per code, the city council can extend it for a period up to 2 weeks, which you did. And then it requires that if you want to extend it again, you come back in and adopt another resolution or take another act to extend it. And so the first duration expires April 5th at 11:02 a.m. And as I put in the memo, it's quite obvious that the COVID-19 pandemic and the need for the city manager to have that emergency authority will extend well beyond that. So it's recommended that you adopt Resolution 2010, which will extend that period of the state of emergency to April 19th at 11:02 a.m. Staff recommends that you adopt Resolution 2010.
Move to adopt Resolution 2010.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Who was that? Okay, I guess nobody's opposed, then the motion passes. What's the next item of business?
Come on, kid.
Okay, at 3.2, council briefing on issues, and we'll have City Manager Bennett take that for us.
Okay, so I'm going to just sort of tell you what's going on with COVID generally. Then we'll have Julia talk about the work that's been done so far relative to what kind of assistance can we give to low-income residents. Then I'd like to have Katie give you a quick rundown of home. And then after that, Jessica, maybe a quick rundown of what's going on with code enforcement. Does that sound good for everybody?
Sounds great.
So first of all, since you last met, I think I told you on Monday that the number we're actually really paying attention to in Oregon to figure out what the situation is, the number of hospitalizations. So today, the Oregon Health Authority reported that statewide 188 people are in the hospital due to COVID-19 related illnesses. That is 21 new cases in the hospital since yesterday, and it compares to 90 a week ago. So as long as you see that number going up by that amount and doubling from a week ago, we know we're still in the upward part of the curve. So that really means no changes to anything that's happening here as well, nothing statewide and nothing that's happening here at the city. I think I also mentioned to you that we will be taking a look between now and at the end of next week about whether there's anything that we've shut down that we could reopen the two things we're talking about are the community gardens and a few of the restrooms in parks, because we've learned that unfortunately without restrooms, it doesn't mean people aren't doing the things that they do in restrooms. So we might be creating a public health situation by not having some restrooms open. So that's the only change that you might see, but as I told you on Monday, we won't be talking about those changes until late next week. Okay, that's all I have. Anybody have any questions for me? Things have really settled down. Councilor Koloff?
Did everybody get my memo from what the conversation with Clackamas County was?
Yeah,
Okay.
those were good. My question is, I've read the letters and the strategies have been put forth. I just want to emphasize that one of the things that can't be gotten around, and we're not really saying it, is the ability to get to the garden without driving.
Right, that's the material difference between our community gardens and Portland's, for example, is most of Portland's are located in neighborhoods close to where people live and people are able to walk to their community garden. The other problem that we have here is that we frequently have folks share tools, and so we need to make sure we have provisions in place to make sure that people bring their own tools from home and then don't share them with other folks in the garden. So that's why we did it. That's why we closed, is that you have to drive to our garden. We're trying to discourage unnecessary trips. But at the same time, we hear what people are saying, and if we can solve it, we will. If we can't solve it, we're going to leave things the way they are.
Right. But what I'm saying is that for the next week, till you do make a determination, we need to make sure that we do say that last little bit, that we're trying to get you out of the car.
We're trying to keep you from making any trips that you can't make from your front door on foot.
Got it.
Or on a bicycle. All right, so with that, I am going to turn next to Julia to sort of talk about where we are with provisions for folks who have lost their jobs or lost their incomes as a result of this crisis. Go ahead, Julia.
Mayor and Council, we had a team that included myself, Finance Department, Library, and then also Diana Smith-Bauer was involved in this. And what we did was looked at several programs that other cities have already implemented and sort of whittled that down to what we thought would probably work best for our city and our community. So what we already have in place, I'm going to get fancy. I'm going to try to share a document with you guys. It's just a short PowerPoint. Right? Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Okay. So the first program was one conveniently that we already have in place. So it's the Utility Billing Assistance Program. Some short notes on it, but this is really great for people who have more of an ongoing need for assistance. And so we didn't want to change anything about this. It seems to work really well. There's about 30 families on average that use it. And, like it says in the bullets, they do renew annually. And I do have a copy of that application. If any of you are interested in looking at that, I can send it to you. Okay, the second program, this is the one that we are thinking might work for us. So it would work more on an emergency basis for people. It could work for, if you think about what people might be going through now where they need a one-time assistance for utilities, it could be really for any event that comes up. But we would create a donation site. The city would contribute to that, and finance is still working out how that piece of it would fit. We would then send the donation funds to a nonprofit and have them screen people for qualifications. So we could set some standards and some criteria, and we're still talking about what those might be. One of them that we might want to set is that it would go to assist Lake Oswego community members. Any questions so far about that? Okay, if we did set up a donation site on our website, it would look similar to this. Okay, that's pretty much all I have. Any questions about that program?
No.
Councillor Wynn?
So selecting the nonprofit that would administer the, the assistance, do you have one in mind already?
St. Vincent de Paul is one we're looking at because they do partner with other cities pretty frequently, and we also refer community members to them already.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Councilor Wendland?
Julia, do you have a dollar amount that, I mean, in the sense of any sort of what the need is versus, I mean, if we raise 5,000 or 10,000 or 50,000, would it take care of the need? Or do you think, I mean, I know it's difficult to project, but just with what currently we have with people, is it a large number each month or is it something that's?
Well, currently they would pay with the UVA that's in place. There's about 30 families on that, and we pay about half of their utility bill. For what this might be used for, I don't have a number, and so that would be something I need to check with finance on to see if there's a way we could sort of put together an estimate.
Because my point being is that if we have, 150 or 1,000 people that apply for it, how do you do
Right.
that? And whether we want to put limits on it up to a certain amount or something might be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely bring that up as a point. That's a good suggestion.
We aren't quite ready to roll it out yet, but I think that we wanted to let you know that where we're focusing right now is utility bills for folks who either, like I said, lost their job or lost their income as a result of this crisis. The average utility bill in Lake Oswego, the average is around $170 a month for all utilities. So depending on what we know about how many folks have had job loss, that's how we could scale it. The other thing is, Megan, do you know if the employment department yet has sub-county level data about job loss or unemployment claims?
But can certainly find out.
I have a question around that $170 a month number. Is that strictly our utility? That isn't PGE or?
No, it's all city. It's all city
Metro.
utilities.
Only city. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, anybody?
Yeah, I got one more, and that is, if I got this right, our utility bill adjustment or assistance program is means tested. So what's your income and whatnot, but somebody may be not necessarily the right salary or income level, but their job is gone. Are we going to look at it holistically or just on income levels?
That's something that we would probably work out with the nonprofit.
Yeah.
So,
And do we need the nonprofit to administer it? Can we do it through utility payments? Can we do something there to streamline it?
We really don't have the internal infrastructure to administer a program like that, nor do we want to be in the business of actually knowing about people's personal circumstances or income. It really creates a nice separation.
Okay.
More questions? All right.
So I really want to thank Julia. We're going to keep, unless anybody thinks we're on the wrong track, we're going to keep moving ahead with this approach, and we'll be back to you when we are ready for you guys to take an action. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah, Your
Quick
Honor.
question. How do you notify, how do you get the information on how to donate? Is it coming to your utility bill or?
That is probably how one of the ways we push it out, but we would probably push it out through every channel we got to let people know that we're happy to accept donations.
Okay, thanks.
Daniel, I see your hand.
Quick question. So if the people do make a donation, would it be considered tax deductible at all?
That's another reason why working with a 501c3 is the way to go, is to make sure that folks' contribution is tax deductible. All right, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Katie. Katie, can you give a quick rundown? I did watch the mayor today. I hope y'all watched the mayor today. You look good, Your Honor. But give us a quick rundown of what we've been up to since Monday.
Sure thing. Thanks, Martha. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. I'll try and keep this brief. Since Monday, our communications team has developed and launched the business form and posted the corresponding business list on our website. We worked with our business assistance team to do that. To date, we've had 67 entries, and we'll be updating that list every day in the first couple of weeks while it's out, and then updating it regularly after that. So we've been encouraging folks to fill that in. That's for all businesses, not just restaurants, but any business that's open in Lake Oswego or closed, to fill in their information. We've also developed content and placed a full-page advertisement in today's edition of the Lake Oswego Review, and that was to target more of our at-risk vulnerable population. That includes information and resources that are available. Some of that information includes the prescription delivery program that the police department has just started this week, which is going really well, as you know. The grocery store hours, information about the Hunger Fighters Food Bank, because they've expanded their hours a little, Meals on Wheels, library resources, and then also a reminder of our Citizen Information Centre that's available. In conjunction with that ad, we've also created a postcard that will be sent out to at-risk population and also dropped off at our aged care facilities across the city. That total mailing is probably around 5,500 to 600, to 6,000. So that includes similar information that we have in the advertisement today, but it also provides additional information on the senior loneliness line that Clackamas County provides. Some information about the scams that are going on during COVID-19, and some price gouging information. As Martha mentioned, this morning we launched Mayor Studebaker's message on the city's website, on YouTube, and across social media. Thank you, Mayor, for producing that. It will also be included in tomorrow's weekly recap newsletter that will go out on in the lowdown and also on Nextdoor. After the Mayor's video, we will increase the frequency of the council videos to being twice a week. So next week, we'll have Councillor Kohlhoff on Tuesday and then Councillor Lamott on Thursday. And we intend to share those talking points with the councillors the Tuesday the week prior. So Councillor Manns, and I think we have Councillor Nguyen for the following week. And then we'll ask you to complete the filming by the Sunday before the week. We'll publish those videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Since Monday, our social media posting and key messaging has been Republic Services garbage changes, domestic violence resources, mental health messaging about reaching out to people that you're not alone. We've shared the crisis hotline. We also launched the Businesses Are Open list. We did the Census Day yesterday, but the library had a really great video that they produced to help people walk through how to fill in the census. We also did an LOPD traffic reminder about speeding and stop signs violations. And then today we have the message for the Mayor, and this afternoon we'll be posting a reminder about what is open and what is not as far as parks. I did receive a call from Leanne Senger at LOCOM earlier, letting me know that she's received quite a few calls on the non-emergency line of people reporting just people in general in parks, not understanding the differences between what the restrictions are. So we're getting some messaging out on that to remind folks what is open and what is not. The LO Review did reach out to us to do a story on our communication strategy and approach. So that should be sometime in the LO Review in the next few days. And I wanted to just give you a quick update. The Citizen Information Centre has responded to 118 calls since they activated 2 weeks ago on March 23rd, and 15 emails. So our highly trained reference staff now are picking up the more of the business assistance questions that we're getting, and we've had an uptick in business calls since earlier this week. So they're helping respond to those and assist people to fill in the forms needed. As far as actions for the next period, as I mentioned, we'll be sharing the weekly recap tomorrow, updating the and revising our FAQs to send to you and also our Citizen Information Center, where we'll edit the two videos for Councillor Koloff and Councillor Mott. One thing that's brand new that we just started thinking about this week is developing a second video program for more of our behind-the-scenes staff. So those that are often quite invisible but are still working for our community. So people like our water treatment plant operators that are still providing water to our citizens 24/7, our maintenance crew members, our IT folks, our Citizen Information Center people, library, finance. So a lot of those support services, we plan to kick that program off with our first video featuring Martha as our city manager, if she'll allow. So we'll plan on sort of probably kicking that off in the next week or so. We also have an ad going in the review next week, which is kind of safety related, more about PPE donations, scammers, price gouging, the prescription pickup. And then we just continue to support the Business Assistance Task Force with messaging and promotion as needed. So those are some of the key goals that we've got coming up. Any questions?
Councillor Mans? You should unmute.
You're on mute.
My bad. As liaison to the Youth Leadership Council, I was wondering if there was any way that we should or could be utilizing them, perhaps to do videos or cover subjects that might appeal to some of the younger demographic in the city with regards to park. Just want to throw it out there. We can talk about it offline.
Yeah, definitely. Good suggestion. Actually, Jamie Inglis, who's on our communications team, we chatted a little bit about the other day. So definitely we can chat a little bit more about that, and happy to involve you in that if we can get their assistance too. Good suggestion.
Thank you.
I would just add, this morning I saw two of our wastewater treatment guys out in the field and then one of our meter folks, the two public works divisions, and they're working hard and they're out there and people can see them. So I love the idea of the behind the scenes folks getting a little, light shined on them. That's a great idea.
Other questions or comments?
Sure do. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll move next to, oh, sorry, Teresa has a question.
Teresa. Koloff.
Just
Go
a
ahead.
comment. I had some trial runs on our videos that we're supposed to produce, and the instructions were not going to allow me to do it the way the instructions wanted me to. And I got a hold of Diana Smith-Bauer, who is awesome, and helped me. So we found a workaround. And I think that the idea of letting people know who is behind us, they see us, but we're not really the ones, the day in and day out problem solvers in that respect. And so I'm very much on board with that. That would be amazing.
Thank you, Councillor Kohlhoff. And yeah, Dinah mentioned that today, so I'm glad she was able to assist you, and she's great with the videos too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Thanks, Katie.
Okay, so now I want to turn to Jessica and ask her to give us a quick update on what's going on with code enforcement, because I imagine that's going to become an issue in just a little while.
Yes, thank you, Martha, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to give you an update on our code enforcement practices for focusing on non-public health and safety regulations in the planning, engineering, and public works departments. And, since the onset of this pandemic, all departments have made some temporary changes to their code enforcement activities in response to the pandemic. And these have been, the purpose of this has been to try to reduce some barriers to businesses Also, we need to comply with social distancing requirements. So we're really trying to not have any face-to-face contact, doing things mainly by phone, email, that type of thing. And then just out of compassion for businesses and residents who are impacted by this crisis. I'm just going to quickly go through each departments and then give you some examples of some of the things that, have been curtailed or that we're accommodating. So starting with the engineering department, I mean, they deal mainly in their enforcement with right-of-way encroachments, erosion control, water quality and spills, traffic control in the right-of-way, and sidewalk tripping hazards. That's kind of their main areas of enforcement. And some of those things we obviously can't step back on because they're public health and safety issues like water quality and spills, erosion control, those types of things. But where there's like minor things like right-of-way encroachments, what they're tending to do, or like a sidewalk tripping hazard is a really good example where if someone has been put on notice that they need to, fix their sidewalk because it's a tripping hazard, the engineering department is really giving those folks a lot more time to comply, especially in consideration of the fact that there's a lot of contractors that maybe aren't available right now or the right folks to kind of help do those repairs. So we're really accommodating folks on that, and we want to get compliance at some point, but giving a lot more time to apply. The other thing they've been able to do is just make it easier for folks to get permits right now because the traffic is so much lighter than it typically is. They've been able to issue traffic control permits for work during the day that they normally would have required at nighttime. So that's been really helpful to a lot of folks. And then also they have started issuing blanket permits to PGE instead of requiring individual permits because, again, the traffic is so much lighter. So they're able to kind of address that in a more consolidated manner than rather on a permit by permit basis. For public works, they don't generally deal much in enforcement, but they do get a lot of complaints. And those complaints generally have to do with trees that are dead or hazardous, in the right of way, or vegetation that is impairing sight distance for vehicles. And they really haven't changed their responses to that. That doesn't usually involve any face-to-face contact. So they're addressing that as normal. And it's really the right of way is kind of mainly ours to manage. So it doesn't really have a lot of setbacks for the abutting property owners. It's really the city responding to it, and we've been responding to it as normal. Moving on to planning. Planning has quite a list of responsibilities for code enforcement. The big one, of course, is tree removal and tree protection. And I just want to say right off the bat that the activity for tree removal and tree protection really has not tapered off much during this crisis. We've still seen a lot of complaints. I think a lot of people are just at home and able to do landscaping projects, and it seems like landscaping and tree removal companies are still kind of operating for business. So we're still seeing a lot of activity in that way. But we have seen, like the engineering department, a kind of an overall decrease in permit activity. But like I said, our complaints seem to be steady. We aren't going to be backing off on tree removal and tree protection. I don't think that that's something the public would want, and we're still able to do that without having face-to-face contact with folks. So that's not something that we're paring back off in the planning department. And certainly it's not reversible. So once a tree is removed or damaged, you can't go back and change that. So it's really important for us to stay on top of that. Our other areas of enforcement are temporary signs, fences, land use conditions of approval, and other general land use matters, such as assuring that setbacks are met for structures, home occupation regulations are being met, and landscaping. As far as what planning is doing, just like the engineering department, we're allowing folks more time to comply, recognizing that nurseries may not be stocked up, or people may not be able to even get anything from nurseries right now. Contractors may not be available to address those violations to bring them into compliance. So we're really trying to give folks as much time as we can. The other thing that the planning department is doing is we're putting temporary sign pickups and enforcement as a very low priority. And this is to assist businesses who are trying to stay open and trying to advertise that they're open. So this would include A-frame type signs, which are generally not allowed in the city. We're just going to basically make it a very low to no priority to enforce those, so to allow those businesses to communicate that they're open. And a lot of businesses have also become very creative in creating drive-through type situations where you have no contact transactions. And so they have signs to kind of direct people. And of course, we're not going to be enforcing any of that. The only exception, of course, is if there are temporary signs that are in the right-of-way that are blocking a sidewalk or impairing sight distance, we will move those signs. But again, we won't be removing or taking them away. The rest of the items will, like I said, we will continue to address those as normal. A lot of them we want to address right away, because if somebody's building a structure that's within a setback, we don't want to wait until later, until after they fully built it. We want to address that right away. So we're still staying on top of those things and are able to, we have the staff capacity, staff is available to do that. So our enforcement on that is staying steady. So as far as enforcement goes, just to sum it up, we've all made some modifications to try to, out of compassion and to help businesses and to maintain social distancing. We'll continue to do that, and we'll remain flexible and make modifications as needed as the situation changes. We're not going to be picking up these temporary signs at this point, and we'll continue to allow folks to have a lot more time to comply. And that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Jessica, thank you very much.
So that's the update. I think we need to go to the next item of business. Is that right, Anne Marie?
Correct.
And I think the next item of business is the business assistance plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who's done really amazing job in following up since your last meeting on Monday.
And before we get to the business assistance piece, I don't know if a counselor has a declaration he wishes to make, or that may be specific to the grant program if you're taking that one at a time.
I think our intention was mostly to complete the work on the grant program. We're going to proceed on the other items that were part of the recommendation from Scott that didn't involve a new program or financial perspective. So we're turning it over to Scott. Scott, I think you're going to talk about the grant program, yes?
I am. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Following up on your prior meeting, the council did ask for staff to come back with a grant program proposal that would provide immediate assistance to small businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic. And one of the things that we've discovered or perhaps understood, but it really came home when we were looking at this and looking at what other jurisdictions have been offering, is that the impact of the COVID pandemic really began to manifest itself here early in the year, even before the governor's executive orders and declaration of emergency. Number of businesses, particularly restaurants, have been impacted in that the association with China really, unfortunately, resulted in xenophobia and some businesses being harmed in that way. So I just wanted to mention that because most of the jurisdictions that are offering some sort of grant program have tied it to the governor's executive order 2012, which took effect just a week ago. And that emergency declaration, of course, occurred earlier in the month. March 8th, I believe, was the date. The staff report says March 8th was the date of Executive Order 2007, which was the order that prohibited on-premises serving of food and beverages. Actually, the emergency declaration, of course, occurred much earlier, and then the follow-up Executive Order 2012 was the stay safe, stay home, stay save lives order that curtailed even more businesses. So when we looked at this, we were looking at one, what should be the budget, what budget would we recommend to the council based on resources that are available for this? What would be an appropriate grant amount that would have a meaningful impact for businesses that have either been closed and intend to reopen at some point, or are operating but have been severely curtailed in their operations. We also looked at just how quickly could we make funds available. So there's some, I think, some good examples out there of other jurisdictions that have implemented similar programs just in a matter of weeks. They've been able to make funds available. And discussing this with the finance department, we believe that we would be capable of doing the same. We also looked at, obviously, the criteria and the requirements that would be appropriate for Lake Oswego to offer a grant program like this. So just to summarize, in looking at primarily the ending fund balances that came in at the beginning of this budget year in both the planning department and some amount in the finance department, between finance director Cross and myself, and in consultation with city manager Bennett, we believe that a budget one-time allocation for the grant program of $250,000 is feasible. So that's the proposal for council's consideration. The grants, jurisdictions are offering anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000, and we looked at trying to scale this to smaller businesses in Lake Oswego and the limited resources that are available. We believe that a grant program offering up to $2,500 based on the number of employees would be appropriate. When we looked at the data for business licenses in Lake Oswego, there are many businesses that have only one employee. These are most likely sole proprietors. They may be, their business might be organized as an LLC. So the owner may in fact be an employee of the company, or they may not. But in any event, there are quite a few businesses that have only one employee or have reported that on their business license. And there are a large number that are somewhere between 2 and 10. There are restaurants that, just by way of example, that have been closed that we're aware of that have 40 or 50 employees, and those that are operating still, but on a limited basis, that have between 20 and 40 employees. So there's quite a range, and we thought it would be trying to keep this as simple and straightforward as possible, both from administrative standpoint and also for the public to understand and be able to access the resources, really looking at 2 tiers. So the proposal is that, and I'm going to scroll down into the proposed requirements and criteria for the grants. You would need to have, you'd be required to have a business license with the city of Lake Oswego as of the date of application. So there would be the ability to obtain a business license between now and then. The business would have to have a physical place of business in Lake Oswego, and so home-based businesses would not be eligible, unfortunately. The need, I'm sure, is very great there too. But based on the fact that we have limited resources and the expenses and overhead that are involved in keeping a brick and mortar business operating, the recommendation is to focus on those businesses that have a physical location in Lake Oswego, commercial space. So we would be looking for basically a statement that they have a lease, a commercial lease or mortgage for the property. Of course, that would exclude businesses that own, their property fee simple, or they own the building. That's a policy issue for the council you might want to consider. Again, focusing on small businesses primarily. We looked at the city of Portland as an example, and they've capped gross revenue for these businesses at $2 million. And we thought it would be appropriate to scale that down somewhat in Lake Oswego, given the real heavy emphasis on small businesses here, small locally owned and independent businesses, and look at a revenue cap of 1.5 million. And this would be ordinary business income or gross revenue. Business operations, now you could be very specific or very prescriptive on this, or leave this more open-ended in terms of how the business has been impacted by the pandemic. Looking at the different examples out there, we felt that it would be appropriate to leave it somewhat open-ended, and that the business has either been prohibited or severely curtailed by the state of Oregon's social distancing requirements. And the reason for that is that, even within certain classes or categories of businesses, not all have been affected equally. So restaurants, some of which have continued to operate through the pandemic, or many of which are having a very difficult time. Others, I'm sure, are having a difficult time too, but their business model relies more on drive-up or drive-through business. So you can see that there is, going to be quite a bit of variation just among very narrow set of businesses. So the criterion or the requirement that the business has either been precluded or severely curtailed is leaving some subjectivity there, but the application process would require ask for a statement as to how the business has been curtailed. And that's one of the proposed requirements. The criteria, again, going back to the available funds, limited resources, the proposal is that businesses with 2 or more employees, and this would be tied to W-2 employees or employees that businesses paying workers' comp for, those businesses would be eligible for grants of up to $2,500, and sole proprietors and other businesses with only 1 employee would be eligible for up to $1,000. You could set that threshold wherever you would like. With a budget of $250,000, we're not going to be able to serve all of the businesses that potentially would be eligible under these criteria. So the process will need to make that very clear and make the opportunity available as widely, or at least make it as make it publicly known as well as we can. We did discuss what one dimension of this is whether the business is a local business or it's headquartered outside the state of Oregon, for example, whether the business is a franchise or not. Some jurisdictions have actually just outright excluded franchises. So one of the proposed criteria is that the business must be an Oregon-based business, or at least would be given first priority, those businesses that are based in Oregon, meaning that if their parent corporation or their headquarters is located out of state, it wouldn't be eligible. Now, what could the grants be used for? This is another area where some of the cities have been very specific about what it can be used for, and some of the input that we received from the council in your prior meeting was that it would be best to leave this as flexible as possible, and that businesses may seek counseling or other assistance to help kind of prioritize how they're spending, whether it's a loan that they're receiving through the federal government or the much smaller grants that the cities are offering. Having the flexibility to pay down a line of credit or credit card balance, or to pay the rent, or to pay payroll, or whatever the situation requires for that business owner to have the flexibility to put the resources where they're going to have the best impact, and potentially would allow the business to continue operating through the crisis, or if not, having the ability to reopen. Finally, under the criteria, we thought it would be appropriate, as other grant programs have similar limitations, that business owners who are employed by the city of Lake Oswego or are family members of city employees and officials, including the city council, would not be eligible. So This is, again, for the council's consideration. And with that, I will take any questions or any feedback.
Questions?
Yes, Councilor Wen?
Yeah, I just wanted to, yes, thank you. I just wanted just to, you know, state just a potential conflict of interest. And as you know, I own a business that includes a Lake Oswego restaurant among several locations. I just wanted to say at the outset that I will not be applying for any grant offered by the Lake Oswego under the program that the council will be discussing and voting on today. And even if I had intended to apply, because there's so many businesses that could be eligible, I feel my petition would be called a class exception, you know, to the conflict of interest rules. But nevertheless, in abundance of caution, I will declare a potential conflict of interest due to the fact that I own a business that could be eligible to apply, even though I will not be applying for a grant. And under the Oregon ethics rules, a potential conflict does not prevent me from participating and voting in this matter. That's it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay. Do we have to, I assume we have to make a motion to approve this program?
Mayor, I do see Councilor Wendland had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Wendland.
In the process, I think it would be helpful if maybe somebody just told their story as well. I mean, have a question part to, I don't know if the application has everything on it, but having a space for if they need extra storytelling time to explain the situation, I just think that would be helpful. But I think the criteria, and I am very glad that you added number 3 in the proposed requirements to do a revenue cap of 1.5 million, because I think that helps get into the right size businesses that really need help. So well done, Scott. Thank you.
And then Councilor Lamont.
Questions or comments?
I would second what Councilor Wendland just said. I think the cap is good. And I also think what you said earlier about not having a lot of specific requirements inside the actual grant. As I mentioned in a memo yesterday, we are finding out that people need to get all their financial information together in order to apply for federal grants. And they may need this in order to get that information together from their accountants or their financial advisors, among a whole array of other things, including business owners that this is their livelihood day to day for their salary, and anything that could go to help anything would be great. So you should be commended for this short time. We got a lot of information together and some great steps. So thank you.
Mr. Powell, we need to have a vote on this to go forward.
Yes, Mayor, and there's a suggested motion outlined in the agenda that would also authorize the city manager to adopt any policies or rules to implement that. So someone, or would you like me to?
I would move to approve a one-time business assistant grant program as proposed in response to the COVID-19 crisis with a budget of $250,000, and authorize the city manager to establish rules and procedures to implement the program.
Second.
Comments? Any further comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. It sounds like it's unanimous. I didn't hear. Okay, next item. City Manager Bennett.
The next item is the proposed letter to Governor Brown in support of the Willamette Valley Behavioral Health Project. City Attorney Powell and I learned some information about this project this afternoon that we'd like to look into a little bit more before you all discuss this particular letter. So with your indulgence, I'd like to put it on your agenda for Tuesday. Is that all right?
Yes, it is.
All right, so that's what we'll do. And then the next item of business is the minutes, and then any feedback or discussion you all have for us.
Approved to.
Okay, we've got it. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes for what, March, which one?
3rd and 30th. March 3rd.
Yes.
30th.
And special meeting on the 30th.
Second.
Second, okay, Councilor Mans. Anybody have any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, good.
So your next meeting is not until Tuesday, just as a reminder, and it is your regular city council meeting. So you will have regular city council business on your agenda for Tuesday night. We will do it just like this, but we will do it at 6:30 p.m. regular time, regular packet.
Well, we will not have a Monday meeting.
We'll not have a Monday meeting.
All right.
I mean, unless you really, really want to have a Monday meeting and a Tuesday meeting. No, Anne Marie will shoot us all if we suggest that.
I don't think so. Is there any comments anybody wants to make before we adjourn? Councilor Koloff.
I would like us to continue having these emergency meetings. So we have 2 meetings a week until and if we get out from under this emergency. I've found this very helpful and been able to learn sufficient information on a routine basis. That's been very helpful. So even if they're short, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, the plan is to continue 1 meeting early in the week and 1 meeting on Thursdays. So next week it'll be Tuesday and Thursday, the following week, Monday and Thursday, and then you'll have a study session again on the, whatever it is, 21st on Earth Day. You'll have a study session. That'll be at regular 3 o'clock time instead of 4, just to make sure you guys are actually reading the packets and paying attention. So we'll keep it going through the month of April.
Councilor O'Neill, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have a shout out to our hunger fighter, Michael Murray, got accepted into Stanford.
Well, good for him, yeah.
Sorry, Mayor, not a duck.
We can live with that. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, we are adjourned until next Tuesday at 6:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.